They handed me a printed schedule like it was a sentence. "Mom, starting tomorrow, these are your new responsibilities." I stood in the living room I'd paid for with 40 years of work and watched my daughter draw a line through my life with a pen. Wake at 6:00 a.m., cook, scrub, drive, launder, iron until 11:00 p.m., and finance groceries out of my small pension. If I didn't agree, she said I could pack my things and leave. The worst part wasn't the threat. It was how easily she said it, as if love could be measured in chores performed and receipts surrendered. My name is Nora Everett. I am 66, widowed, and the deed to this house is in my name alone. I bought it when my daughter Ranita was 3 after her father left. Back then, I rose at 5:00 a.m., caught 2 buses to a government office, and filed papers until my fingers cramped. On Fridays, I skipped lunch to add $5 to a coffee tin labeled house. When we moved in, we danced on the bare floorboards and ate soup with plastic spoons because I couldn't afford bowls yet. I thought our home would be a promise that Ranita would always have a safe place. Lately, it has felt like the promise was a trap one sprung on me by the very person I made it for. The schedule in my hand marched across the hours like soldiers. 6:00 a.m. breakfasts. 7:00 a.m. dress the kids and drive them to school. 8:00 a.m. general cleaning. 9:00 a.m. laundry and hang to dry. 10:00 a.m. prepare lunch. On it went mop, dust, shop, cook, bathe, iron until the last order at 11:00 p.m. Gustavo, my son-in-law, made it clear from the couch without looking up from his phone that all house expenses were obviously my job. "That's what your pension is for," he said, sipping a beer I had bought. Ranita, in a bright pink manicure, added that she and Gustavo had spoken to a lawyer, and because they'd lived here more than 2 years, they had rights. I could either become their live-in help or leave, in which case they might stay anyway to maintain the property. The audacity took my breath away. I looked around at what used to be mine. The leather sofa I'd paid off in 24 installments was ripped where the children jumped on it. The handmade coffee table, once polished to a honey glow, was a graveyard of cup rings. My framed photos, graduations, Christmas mornings, the day I cut the ribbon on this house, had been replaced with action movie posters. My books were crammed into a box in the garage to make room for gaming consoles. My grandchildren sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes glazed by tablets, oblivious to the quake under their feet. "Grandma, are you making snacks?" 8-year-old Ethan asked without looking up. To them, I was a bottomless dispenser of food and favors, a background hum that made life smoother until someone printed the hum into a time card. When I went to the kitchen to begin my duties, the pantry held 3 broken cookies, an expired can of tuna, and half a bag of rice. The refrigerator offered 2 yogurts with Ranita's name in marker 1 of Gustavo's beers, and a sad container of 3-day-old leftovers. I heard heels click behind me. Ranita. She slapped a grocery list on the fridge with a magnet, $150 worth of items and errands, including vitamins and Gustavo's special shampoo. When I said my pension couldn't stretch that far every week, she sighed like I'd inconvenienced her. "Gustavo is saving for our future home, Mom. We can't spend our income on basics when you eat here every day. They had been here 2 years. They came after he lost a job, and the landlord raised their rent. The first months were full of thank yous and promises. Only a few months, Mom. We cooked together. Gustavo fixed a shelf. The kids planted herbs in coffee cans. Then small favors turned into expectations. Me watching the children just this afternoon multiplied into 3 days a week. Can you pick up groceries since you're there? Became handing me the card to pay. Every no problem I offered, polished a new link in a chain I didn't notice wrapping around me until it tugged. The list wasn't the only insult that day. As I stood at the sink, Gustavo wandered in pajama-clad at 4:30 p.m. and asked me to keep kitchen noise down during his rest because he worked from home on Tuesdays. Then Ranita announced I should move out of my master bedroom into the tiny back room by the kitchen because it's more practical and they needed the big closet. It's closer for you to start breakfasts without disturbing anyone, Gustavo chimed in. I thought of the dresser I bought with my first paycheck, the vanity, where I pinned my wedding veil, the bed where I held colicky Renata through aching nights. They wanted those too. You don't need much space, she said, at your age. That Friday morning, as I plated pancakes for the kids, Renata breezed in, wearing a red dress, and announced a couple's retreat downtown. I was to keep the children all weekend according to a laminated schedule. We deserve it, she said. Gustavo got a bonus. I stared at the mug my late husband had given me on our 5th anniversary, now warming her hand. The words I'd bitten back for months reached my tongue. This can't go on. She called me grumpy and suggested a doctor because at your age, hormones. I put the spatula down and finally said it aloud. I'm not sick. I'm tired of being treated like an employee in my own home. Saturday became a parade of petty drainings. A spill on the rug meant a 9 o'clock run to the supermarket for special cleaner, while 2 little voices requested $8 cereal and $10 cookies, like Dad's. Sunday afternoon, the house was spotless for their return when my neighbor Lucy called. Honey, you've been leaving at dawn and coming back with bags. Are you okay? In my kitchen, I showed her the schedule, the list, the threat. Lucy's face hardened into a truth I'd been dodging. This is exploitation. The word cracked something open. She squeezed my hands. You are 66, not 96. You own your home. You have a pension. They need you, you don't need them. Start with a boundary, or better call a lawyer. At 6 a.m. Monday, the doorbell rang. Gustavo's mother, Marisa, swept in with 2 giant suitcases and a list of special breakfast needs as if my house were a hotel. By 7:00 a.m., I was being scolded by Gustavo for not having whole wheat bread and ripe fruit for his mother. Go now and buy it, he said. Plan better next time. Something inside me, thin as an eggshell and just as vulnerable, finally cracked clean through. I agreed I'd go to the store and took my purse. But instead of the supermarket at 8:30 a.m., I walked into a law office, withdrew $200 I'd saved for emergencies, and told the attorney, I think this is one. When I sat down across from attorney David Miller, I expected pity. What I got was clarity. Mrs. Everett, he said, after listening to me for 20 minutes, what your daughter and her husband are doing is elder exploitation. You have every legal right to take back your home. The words felt electric, like oxygen rushing into lungs starved for too long. For months, I had been told I was overreacting, ungrateful, dramatic. Now the truth was printed on his letterhead. He explained my options with steady precision. Send written notices ending any informal arrangement, establish rules for anyone staying in the house, and require rent and shared expenses if they wish to remain. If they refused, eviction orders could follow. His calm made the impossible sound procedural. When he told me it would cost $300 to prepare the documents, I nearly laughed. $300 was what Renata and Gustavo spent in a weekend pretending to be in love. I handed him the bills on the spot. I'd like the letters today, I said. At the bank afterward, I changed every password, canceled my daughter's card access, and asked the teller to make sure only I could withdraw funds. The woman behind the counter nodded with quiet understanding. Good for you, Mrs. Everett, she said. It's never too late to set boundaries. By the time I reached home, I carried no groceries, but for the first time in years, I held power. Renata and Marisa were waiting, lips pressed tight. Where were you? My daughter demanded. Mother's starving. I laid the envelope of letters on the coffee table. We need to talk, I said. The shift in my voice startled even me. I told them I had consulted a lawyer about my rights as homeowner. Renata tried to laugh. Mom, you're being ridiculous. I slid her letter across the table. Read it. Her eyes flicked across the page, widening at every line. $800 a month rent equal share of utilities and full respect of property rights, or vacate within 30 days. Marissa's notice was shorter, 48 hours to leave as an unauthorized guest. Silence thickened. "You can't do this," Ranata said finally, her voice trembling between anger and disbelief. "We're family." I met her eyes. Families don't hand each other work schedules. The words rattled them. Marissa stammered that she was an elderly woman and couldn't be thrown out. I reminded her that she had her own house and had arrived uninvited. Ranata tried another tactic, tear-soft hands reaching for mine. "Mom, you know we love you. We just wanted things organized." "Then consider this organization," I said. When Gustavo came home, they must have called him already. He stormed in like a man walking into a courtroom he thought he controlled. "So this is how you repay us," he barked. "After everything we've done to make this house a home, I didn't raise my voice. You've done that at my expense. And it stops today." He blustered about tenant rights until I told him elder exploitation was a federal offense. The silence after that was heavy enough to crush his defiance. Ranata broke first. "You can't live alone, Mom. What if you get sick? Then I'll hire help and pay them fairly," I answered. "I'd rather do that than live as your unpaid servant." Marissa, suddenly less regal, muttered she could manage elsewhere. Gustavo's anger deflated into calculation. "How long do we have?" he asked. 30 days, I said. "Your mother has 48 hours. They left the room without another word. I expected guilt, maybe sorrow. What I felt was relief so sharp, it almost hurt. 2 days later, Marissa was gone, trailing indignation like perfume. A month later, Renata and Gustavo packed their things and moved into an apartment across town. I watched their car disappear, unsure whether to cry or dance. The house was quiet again, no cartoons blaring, no demands shouted from upstairs. For a week, I kept expecting someone to call out Mom. Then the silence changed flavor. It wasn't emptiness, it was peace. The first thing I did was buy fresh flowers, $15 of beauty, just for me. I put them on the dining table and laughed until tears came. I started taking painting classes with Lucy, then dance lessons at the community center. The mirror began reflecting a woman I recognized, back straight eyes, bright alive. Ranata called after a few weeks, her tone cautious. "The kids miss you." I told her they could visit every other Saturday. When they did, I was no longer exhausted or resentful. We baked cookies, watched cartoons, and laughed until our sides hurt. They still saw their parents. But here, they saw something else, the version of their grandmother who smiled for herself. One afternoon, little Valerie asked Grandma, "Why don't you live with us anymore?" I told her the truth gently. Because everyone needs their own space to be happy. Ethan, older and thoughtful, nodded. "Mom made you work too much, didn't she?" I smiled. We all had to learn better ways to love. Now when I wake at 7:00 a.m., it's because I choose to. The kettle whistles for me alone, and each cup of coffee tastes like freedom. I sometimes wonder if Renata understands what she lost, but I no longer wait for her apology. Dignity once reclaimed doesn't need permission to stay. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories like mine. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? I'd love to hear your thoughts.